Hi everybody, I'm back today with what I think is going to be a very interesting and special video for me about my OCD. So for anybody that doesn't know me, my name is Callie and I was diagnosed with OCD 12 years ago. I've gone through exposure and response prevention or ERP therapy, worked on a lot of things, got my life pretty much back on track as much as anybody can have their life on track, I guess. We're all still kind of figuring it out. 10 years ago, I made a video about my harm OCD story that really, I think struck a chord with a lot of people because they were looking for something that they could relate to, something that spoke to them. And for some people, that was that video. So since that video is 10 years old this month, I want to do kind of a reaction video to watching that, seeing what's changed, seeing what's the same, seeing how I feel. I haven't really watched this video in quite some time, so don't exactly remember what I should be expecting right now. So it's gonna be an adventure for both of us here. I have it queued up, so let's get started. Hi guys, hope you're doing well. I want to do a video today about anxiety, particularly OCD, because that's what I struggle with. Wait, for 1 second, can we acknowledge that 10 years later I still do my eyeliner the same way? It's not a phase, Mom. I remember when I was really kind of in the thick of it, experiencing the worst of the symptoms that I had. There weren't very many stories out there, either on YouTube or wherever, you know, on blogs and stuff, that were similar enough that I felt like I was really connecting with anybody. That was one of the main reasons, like selfishly, I think, that I made this video, was because I wanted that reassurance of somebody saying, like, yeah, this has happened to me, like, yeah, this is, you know, you're not like crazy or whatever. It was like twofold. I wanted people to be able to hear the story and say, oh my God, that is me too. And then I wanted people to tell me that I was okay. You know what I mean? So reassurance is sneaky like that. And I sometimes still struggle with that, if I'm being perfectly honest, but it is what it is. I want to make this video for people like that. So maybe you'll stumble upon this if you're struggling, or if you know someone that's struggling, and hopefully you'll find this helpful. I am 24 years old now, currently, and when my OCD kind of came on, or the onset of it happened when I was 22. Throughout my whole life, I had always been an anxious person, and that's typical for people who have onset, you know, later on. You kind of have these symptoms or signs leading up to onset of the actual disorder. I struggled, well, still struggle, I can't say it past tense, unfortunately, the most with harm. That's still true. You are going to have ups and downs in your life, but you're going to be able to manage. And when I say, like in this video, like, oh, I'm still struggling, I wish I could say it past tense, whatever. I know that I remember like the headspace that I was in this video, and I was not having a good time, for sure. Like, even though a couple years had passed, I hadn't yet really done ERP. I hadn't done a lot of that stuff yet. I was still very much stuck in rumination and compulsions, and I was like a shell of myself at this point. Like, I remember, this is not a happy girl in front of me on the screen. Like, in my mind, this isn't me. This is somebody that just, like, I'm seeing that's talking about their experience. You know, I want to help this person. I want to just tell this person, like, it's fine. You'll be okay. All right, let me rewind for a quick second so that I can... Struggled, well, still struggle. I can't say it past tense, unfortunately. The most with harm OCD. Now, when you name different types of OCD, like if there's relationship OCD, if there's harm OCD, like I said, if there's pedophilia OCD, they're all OCD. They're all under this umbrella that is OCD. We just give them different names that don't mean anything, just to kind of help with describing the obsessions that we have, or the symptoms that we're... I think this is so important too, because a lot of people, especially if you're just finding out about OCD, that it's maybe more complex than you initially thought, a lot of people get really hung up on the names. The names don't matter. I mean, for as many people as suffer with OCD, as many millions of people, there are that many types of OCD because no one's OCD is exactly the same. So like the things that I might obsess about that somebody who is like struggling just as much, they're not the same things. Don't get caught up so much in the names, pure O versus, whatever, or like harm OCD, pedophilia OCD, like religious OCD. It just is a way to like describe the theme of what you're worried about. So it doesn't change like how you'd go about treatment insofar as like you wouldn't get like a different treatment, like ERP is still the gold standard. It's just that the content of what you're focusing on in your therapy is different. Does that make sense? Bottom line, we're all going through it. We just have different words to specify the types of things that we're getting hung up on. That's like when people say pure O OCD. It doesn't really mean anything different. It just means that your compulsions are less likely to be visible things. Like a lot of people that have, visible compulsions will have to touch certain things a certain amount of times. They'll have to walk over certain tiles or something a certain amount of times just so it feels right. But people with pure O OCD, you can spend hours thinking about one thing, thinking about your life, ruminating about certain things. So those things you can't see happening, but they're still happening. There's still compulsions. There's still things that you do to feel better. Like I was saying, I deal the most with harm OCD. And it's kind of come in various forms, and I didn't realize what the hell it was when it was happening. And if you had asked me when it first came on, when it was really the worst, if I thought I was ever going to get out of it, I would have said no. I thought for sure I was either going to have to kill myself or that I was going to end up in some kind of institution somewhere, or that I so clearly remember feeling this way. I remember feeling like, what's the point in, trying to get better? What's the point in living? What's the point if I'm going to be miserable or if I'm going to be a danger or whatever? I always felt like I was trapped, like I was a caged animal, and it was so scary, and it was so real, and it was very frustrating to not have people around me. I felt like everybody didn't understand. When you're going through something, especially OCD, I think a lot of people struggle with this. They're like, I'm the only one. Yeah, like maybe your OCD is bad, but mine's worse. Like mine, there's nothing like mine. No. We're all going through it. And, if you're talking to a therapist that specializes in ERP and OCD, they know. You're not some special case, unfortunately. I'm sure you're special in other ways, but this way you are not. Yeah, I remember feeling this way and feeling like there was no help for me. There was nothing I could do. There was no light at the end of the tunnel. It was rough. It was truly very rough. And there are times since this that I remember also feeling like I was slipping back or something. And that was if I wasn't keeping up with what I should be doing, like if I was falling into compulsions or if I wasn't taking care of myself. But the only difference now is I know what it is, know that I got out of it, and I know that it does get better. There's like an ebb and flow to it. So like, yeah, you're in a tough point now, but you won't be like that forever. Even though I can't feel the light at the end of the tunnel, I know it's there. Like I know there's that light there somewhere, which makes it a little bit easier. You learn as you go and you experience and just live. You learn that, this is not the end of the world. Feels like it. I don't want to like discount that. If you're in like a really tough panic attack or something, it feels like you can't go on. It really does. But that's not the case, fortunately. Just something awful was going to happen. And 2 years later, I'm still here, so I guess it wasn't, it was bad, but it wasn't that bad, so. Harm OCD specifically, when your obsessions deal with harm, it's exactly what it sounds like. Some people worry that they will hurt themselves or hurt other people through negligence, like if you don't wash the dishes properly, you're gonna poison someone, or if you're driving your car, you might think that you hit somebody and have to go back and check. That's your compulsion, you have to go back and check. But for me, the fear, the obsession is that I'm going to purposely hurt somebody. Like I'm going to do something entirely out of character and I'm going to purposely, willingly hurt somebody. And these thoughts are very distressing to anyone that experiences this. They scare you a lot. I remember when it was first happening, I didn't want to be around anybody, but at the same time, because I thought I was going to hurt somebody, but I also didn't want to be alone because I thought I was going to hurt myself. Even now, like I said, if I have like a little backslide or like a little lapse with my OCD, that is still what gets me. That is still where my mind goes. Granted, now I have the tools to, know better or know what to do in that kind of situation. But that is where my mind goes, is that, well, you're going to hurt somebody. You're like, you want to hurt somebody. You are going to do something. You're not going to remember it. That's the kind of thing that still, all these years later, my brain is like, we're picking on that. Like, we're settling on that theme. I've run the gambit with like, different types of, or themes of OCD. It always comes back to harm. It always comes back to that, because I guess that is my biggest fear. And, as we know, OCD latches onto whatever you're the most afraid of, or things that you care about the most, my family or whatever. It latches onto that idea that you could be a danger to them. It's so funny when people ask like the question like, oh, what's your biggest fear? Like, what are you afraid of? Some people are like snakes or, spiders or whatever. None of that stuff scares me. I like that stuff. I am my biggest fear. My OCD makes me my biggest fear. My brain and its capabilities are my biggest fear. So it's not only hurting other people, it's self-harm, it's all kinds of things. I remember I was really worried that I was going to hurt an animal, and that was terrifying. So I didn't want to be around anybody. I didn't want to do anything. I wished I didn't exist, honestly. Wish you had never been born, because you never want to experience that. And the thing is that people that have these kinds of obsessions I've always been an animal person. I would lay awake in bed at night afraid of what was going to happen to my family. Like if one of, which by the way, that was OCD. I didn't realize it at the time, but me as like a small child being so afraid that my parents were going to die or something. I think a lot of people like have those fears. How extreme it was for me, the intensity of that was OCD. I didn't know it at the time. My parents died or something, So I was always afraid of like things happening to the people or the animals or whoever that I cared about. And so that's what happens with OCD. It attacks the things that you care about. A little bit about the onset of it, how it happened. So when I was 22 years old, I was getting ready. This was in mid-August. I was getting ready for the following month in September to go to India. And I've traveled long flights before, and I just know that I don't. If only she knew what she'd be doing very shortly after this video. Talking about, oh, long flights, whatever. A couple months after this video, she went back. I'm saying me. A couple months after this video, I went back to China. So I went to India, I went to China, and then not even a year after that, I moved to China. I thought I was gonna die and whatever. I did all this stuff. It's crazy. I'll get into that. Travel well. I know that I don't do well with time changing, and I just, I have a lot of anxiety about it because, when I first went to China, for example, I got very, very sick from just because I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, and I went to the doctor because I had to go and get my vaccinations and these certain things that were required because I was going to be helping out with the filming of a documentary. So I had specific things that I needed to do at the doctor. So I went there and I told them, that I had some travel anxiety and that I was, kind of worried about it. Looking back, hindsight is 2020. So I'm gonna cut this little bit out because I'm gonna summarize it for you. Basically, I went to the doctor. I was getting ready to go to India. Again, knowing previously when I went to China, I didn't travel well. I mentioned that I had some travel anxiety, and it was only a couple weeks, maybe 2 weeks before my trip to India, and they put me on an SSRI, which again, looking back now, I still agree I shouldn't have been on for what they were prescribing it for. When I think about the time that it would have taken to even acclimate to that medication, it just didn't make sense time-wise. What I was really looking for was something that I could take when I felt anxious to make me feel better immediately, not something that I would have to build up in my body. That's basically, bottom line, what I'm cutting out here and shortening. I had a lot of pent-up animosity and anger, I guess, at these doctors, which some of it is warranted, I will say, and I'm sure I'll get into that, but the way I was treated after this was not, the bedside manner was not very good. And I still agree I shouldn't have been on that medication for that purpose. I should have just been on something that I could take, again, when I felt anxious, feel better, whatever, and then go about my day. There was no reason for me to have been on that medication. 3 days on the lowest dose, and I started having these visions and thoughts. And I have to stress this. People that have these visions or thoughts, they're not desires to do these things. I was so scared when I would talk about this. I'm not so much anymore because it's like, whatever, what are you gonna do to me? But like, I was so afraid that people were gonna think that I was like confessing that I wanted to do awful things, or that I was like, yeah, you know, I just like, if only I could do this terrible thing or whatever, that I wanted to do it. Now I'm like, whatever, you know, I don't care. When I was like at this point, it was very difficult to talk about in certain situations, because I was like, what if they think that I want to, you know, do some awful thing, or what if they think I want to hurt somebody or whatever. So I would always preface it with be like, I just want to make sure you know that I don't want to do this. Very anxious about that particular thing too. I was so hypervigilant about watching people, and like if they made the slightest indication that what I was saying was like weird or they were weirded out, I was immediately like, alarm bells ringing. I'm like, oh my God, they think I'm gonna hurt them. Oh my God, what if I do? What if I, you know, whatever. So I was like, it was bad. The impulses, but they're negative impulses that you do not want to act on. So I started having these visions or these kind of thoughts of hurting. I remember I was holding one of my dogs and I was like, I could just snap his neck right now. That is what I just talked about in my last video. That is the number one thought that I just remember pushing me off the edge, because it was so upsetting, so distressing, so disgusting. I lost it. I really, truly spiraled after that. And then I kind of brushed it off, but then it didn't stop. It was like everything, everywhere I went, every room I was in, every like whatever, something was a weapon in my head that I was gonna suddenly grab and use to hurt somebody or to hurt myself. So when this first happened, I was afraid to go into the bathroom because there are razors in there, there are scissors in there. You know, I thought I was gonna do something with them, I was gonna hurt myself, or that I was gonna grab them and stab somebody, like one of my cats or something. I didn't know what OCD was at this point. Like many other people, I kind of thought that OCD it had to do with cleanliness or like organization. And for some people it does play on those things. It's a little more complicated. For many people with OCD, that is not the case. And in fact, many people that do have OCD will tell you that they are very disorganized and very messy. And that is the case for me. That was one of those things that still irks me, like to this day. And I know people don't mean it in a way that's like, they don't mean to discredit you or trivialize the feelings that you have with OCD, because they don't. You have to remember, when people say, oh, I'm so OCD, I'm so whatever, they don't know what that actually means. Like, they don't know that you might be curled up in the fetal position, like rocking for hours because you are afraid you're going to hurt somebody, or that you think you might have run somebody over, or, you know, whatever the thing is. They don't understand that it's so much more complicated than like having a tidy environment, or like being clean, or like wanting, you know, whatever. It is so much more than that. They just don't know it. So I try and like give them that grace and be like, I know you don't know what you're saying is offensive, but it actually is. So, you know, gently you can try to educate people. I think that that's probably the best way to go. I remember not even having the vocabulary to look up what was going on with me, like when I started searching it online, because in my head, I only knew OCD as obviously what I was talking about, like wanting things to be clean or whatever. Specifically remember sitting there and Googling like scary thoughts, scary unwanted thoughts or whatever it was, because I didn't even know the word intrusive thoughts. I didn't understand, like I didn't know what that was. I didn't have the vocabulary to like look at what that was. Yeah, I remember vividly coming upon this article that there was a picture of a kitchen knife and it said something like, you know, I had these thoughts that what if I picked up the knife and stabbed my partner while we were making dinner or whatever it was. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, this is it. And then it's like, if you have thoughts like this could be OCD. And I'm like, OCD? I'm like, but I'm messy. I didn't really put that all together. So I had no idea what I was going through. So I was, you know, I went back to the doctor. I made like an emergency appointment, and to kind of cover their own asses, I will never forget what this doctor said. Okay, verbatim, I can tell you what he said because I've never forgotten it. We'll check it. But this doctor said to me, after, you know, all going through everything that I'm talking about, everything that I was saying was happening to me, saying that this has never happened to me, he basically said that I was suddenly schizophrenic, and he verbatim said, this is why so many artists end in tragedy, and I just hope you won't turn to drugs and alcohol to cope with this. Let's see if I was right. I told him what I was experiencing, and he was like cutting me off and saying like, oh, well, you feel this way, you know, you're probably bipolar, you're probably this, you're probably schizophrenic. I'm like, I've never had anything like this before in my life. And he asked me if I was artistic, if I was like, you know, into art, or if I was a musician or whatever. I told him, yes, I am a painter. And I will never forget verbatim, he said to me, this is why so many artists end in tragedy. And I hope that you don't turn to drugs and alcohol to cope with this. This is still so upsetting all these years later. If you are like a healthcare provider, or if someone is, or even as a friend, if someone is coming to you, please be mindful that the things that you say stick with people. It means something that 12 years later, I can still remember sitting there in that doctor's office and that doctor saying that to me. It has stuck with me to this day. I'm still so angry about that. I think I will probably be angry about that for the rest of my life. The panic that sent me down, like that, this was the worst experience of my life. And I went to a professional and wanted help, and rather than say, hey, I don't really know about this, like let's try and find you somebody that does know, he took it upon himself to say all these things that really had me flying off the handle. And I just want for anybody watching this to know that in these kinds of situations, I think I was a little bit too young, not so much naive, like I didn't know, I was ignorant, I didn't know. You are your biggest advocate for, you know, in these types of situations. Don't let anybody tell you if it doesn't feel right, if you know that that's not true about you, or if they're trying to put words in your mouth. Don't let that happen. Needless to say, I was freaking out, and that night I ended up in the emergency room because I was having panic attacks and I couldn't deal with it. And I was running on, I'm starting to cry, I'm sorry. It's very hard to remember this. I was running on, you know, many days of no sleep, and I couldn't eat anything. I was just drinking those shakes, and I couldn't even finish them. And this is hard to watch for me, even now, because I just remember, again, that really deep despair that I was in. I was so isolated and so alone, and again, I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. You know, I was exhausted, and I just couldn't function. I couldn't do anything. And so I ended up in the emergency room, and I had to be supervised because I told them that I was having, you know, thoughts of hurting myself or hurting others. And I tried to explain to them that I didn't want to do these things. I had never done anything like that. I'd never wanted to. I still remember them in the emergency room. I was just trying to confide and say, you know, I'm having these like scary thoughts. Again, still didn't know what like intrusive thoughts were, still didn't know what that was, and I couldn't verbalize accurately what I was going through, and they thought that I was dangerous in a way. And I mean, I guess I did too. Like, I didn't know, I didn't know otherwise. So I still remember the looks on their faces and like the cadence with which they talked to me. It was not great. Not great. Looking back on it now, what's very alarming, I think, is how little they could help me. How little they were prepared for anything. The way that they were talking to me, like I was a child that didn't understand. Yeah, that was or tough. Almost like I was someone that could be set off. And it didn't matter how many times I tried to explain, you know, I don't want to do these things. I don't understand what's happening to me. I need you to help me because I don't want these things to happen. They called in one of those intervention counselors or crisis counselors or whatever, and he was more understanding, all things like that. And he was like, listen, this is not like the true you suddenly blossoming through. It's, you know, this is something that's happening and you're dealing with it and it'll be okay. And he kind of helped me find a psychiatrist. Once you start talking to anybody that has experience with mental health, they're like, okay, like, I know what you're experiencing. It has nothing to do with you being a sociopath hidden or whatever. And all you really want, you just want, like, I just want a time machine to go to the end of my life and meet myself and say, what did you do? Did you do anything that you were worried about at my age? And then to have the, well, I guess old lady me, I don't know when I'm gonna die, but I guess you imagine an old lady, to have future dying me look at me and say, no, you didn't do any of that. Well, I guess I could be the old lady now. Hopefully I'm not dying. You never know. But I can say 10 years later, you get in that time machine, you meet me. No, you never did those things, but here's the other things you did do. So the things that you thought like you would never be able to do because you thought you were going to die, you thought you were gonna have to kill yourself, you thought you were gonna be locked up, whatever. I went back to school. Not only did I go back and get my master's, I did it in another country. I moved to another country, lived there for 4 years, got my master's degree, learned a foreign language while doing it. I am in a long-term happy relationship. I have a house that, you know, we maintain. I have my own pets. I have my own life. I have a full-time job that I thought I'd probably never be able to support. Like, I wouldn't be able to mentally be at a place that I could work full-time and enjoy what I'm doing and like have coworkers that I see every day. You've done so much that you thought you would never be able to do. And like very soon after this, did you start on this journey? So this would have been April of 2015. I went to China to visit in May into June of 2015, and then moved to China a little over a year after I made this video. And like, I knew none of this was happening at this point when I made this video. I knew I was going to China to visit, but did I know that I was gonna go live there? That I was gonna get my master's degree, that I was gonna speak Chinese, that while I was there, I was gonna reconnect with somebody I went to college with and we'd start dating, and now almost 7 years later, we're still together. I couldn't have known all of these things were going to happen, like at this point. How could anybody know? I don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow, but I'm just saying, things change. They don't go the way that you expect them to go. You worried, you wasted your whole life worrying. That's what I want. And then I can come back and be like, okay, well, I don't have to worry about it anymore. So the rest of that video is me saying, you know, I want to make more videos and all that stuff. And I eventually do make more videos. I made, you know, quite a few videos about having anxiety and OCD, and then all kinds of vlogs about my adventures and things that I thought that I would never be able to do, but I was able to do them in spite of my OCD. 10 years later, knowing where I was, my headspace at that point, knowing things that I know now and knowing where I've gone since that video, if that makes sense, where my life has gone. And I think I didn't do ERP for quite some time still after this video. I was doing talk therapy, which we know is really not really the best thing. It works for some things, but OCD is not very good for. So it would be a little while before I went into the process of actually doing ERP. But, you know, again, I I think I mentioned in another video that I didn't really have the resources back then that we have available to us now. So I wish that I had been able to start ERP earlier. It was what it was, and I was doing what I knew at the time, and now I know better. And now I can help you because I can tell you guys that there are resources for you, and one of the best ones is NOCD. And you can go to NOCD.com or treatmyocd.com today, and you can start getting better and feeling better, because that's important. And you can talk to a therapist that is certified in ERP and can actually help you with your OCD symptoms. And I think that that's just, there's no way around it. You just have to do it, because if you want to be able to accomplish the things that you want to in life, that's what you got to do. And that's the way to do it. Like I said before, it's not easy, but it is so worth it. Man, what a trip it's been watching that video. Man, I wish I didn't struggle so much, but it is what it is. Anyway, I hope that that was fun and enlightening for you and interesting, because it's not every day that we get to see a peek back into our life. It just so happened that I recorded this one, 10 years ago, and I have that to look back on. So I'm happy to be able to share that with you guys. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you later. Bye.